Well, hi there! I hope you're watching because, boy, it was definitely not me who spent all night binging over 1,000 episodes from all of Marvel animation. No! Who would be crazy enough to watch literally everything from the Marvel superheroes released in 1966 to the latest What If episodes? Definitely not me! Okay, I'm fine. I'm okay. But anyways, I have gone through 1,000 episodes and even some of the animated movies, and I have made the final conclusive list of every Marvel character from all of Marvel animation ranked. Can they take out the entire galaxy? S tier. Do they struggle at taking candy from a baby? F tier. From all of the Spider-Man and Tony Starks to even more obscure characters like Hitmonkey, this list contains some of your favorite and least favorite characters from all of Marvel media. Just so we're clear from the get-go, there are 2 rules to this ranking.
Stop acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules.
The first one is that I couldn't possibly rank every character from everything, so I just decided to go for an even 50. This already took so long, and I had way too many characters I wanted to talk about, so I really had no choice but to remove many of them from the ranking. Either way, most of the characters that you expect in this list will be there, so stay tuned to hear what I think about them. The second rule is that we'll be talking a lot more about what we know about the abilities of various characters rather than just what we see. Sometimes in different shows, the same characters have completely different levels of power, and a lot of these characters limit themselves, so it's just a lot easier to look at the upper limits of their abilities instead of just what we see in one show or the other. With all that said, let's talk about a guy in a Speedo to start off this list. Prince Namor, as the name suggests, is royalty.
Atlantis is the prince of the deep.
The version of this submariner that I'll be focusing on here is from the Marvel Superhero Show, which first aired in 1966. There's a specific reason for that, but I'll get into it in a bit. Namor is the mutant son of a sea captain and the Queen of Atlantis, and so he has a lot of responsibility. Responsibility of managing the sea, responsibility of keeping his home safe, Atlantis safe, and responsibility to break as many hearts as he can while rocking that Speedo. He made Aquaman cool before Aquaman even existed. Quite literally. He can breathe underwater, withstand a seemingly endless amount of pressure, and can go toe-to-toe with the Hulk. It's safe to say he's someone whose bad side you don't want to get on.
No need to struggle.
His influence isn't just limited to the Marvel Universe either, but comes up in the real world too, since he is one of the first Marvel heroes to ever be created, first appearing all the way back in 1939. Most importantly, during the golden age of comic books, he was one of the 3 most popular heroes, being just as popular as Captain America and the Human Torch. Overall, considering the importance he has in the Marvel Universe and his amazing coverage, or lack thereof, in the show, I think that Namor should be in the B tier. I mentioned at the start of this video that the version I'm talking about here is from a show made in 1966, almost 8 decades ago. And the reason behind that is because that's pretty much the most prominent role he ever received on the television screen. He makes a lot of cameos in many of the other shows down the line, but none of them give him a bigger role than just making him a guest star. Also, most of his strength lies in the water, which means that he gets a huge nerf the moment he has to walk on land, which kinda makes him obsolete for most fights. The big takeaway here is that while he is very strong in the comics, he's never really given much of a chance to show the same strength in the animated series. And so Namor is going into the B tier. It may seem high, but like I said, this guy stood up to the Hulk and ruled an entire kingdom. You try fighting that. But anyways, let's move to someone who's rock solid in their spot on this list, The Thing. Ben Grimm, or The Thing, is a man with a lot of skills, to the point some would say that The Thing could do a lot of things. No? Okay, on a serious note, The Thing is easily one of the most recognizable characters from Marvel, let alone the Fantastic Four. He's kind of the grumpy uncle of the group, the one who has seen too much in his time, and is always ready with a wisecrack or a literal punchline. In a world where everyone's trying to be sleek and shiny, The Thing embraced his rough exterior and showed us that being made of orange rock could actually be kinda cool. Seriously though, all of that rock isn't just for show. He can take hits from almost anything, be it a punch from Doctor Doom or the cosmic rays of Galactus. And he can dish out just as much damage as he takes.
Clobber it, dog!
being able to go toe-to-toe with characters like Namor and Thor, picking up cars, giant batteries, holding up bridges. He can probably lift up to 100 tons, or one blue whale. Either way you slice it, the thing is strong and pretty durable. But the issue with him is that there's really not a lot he can do other than take a punch and throw a punch. While he has gone up against some of the strongest enemies in all of Marvel, he only won those fights because of the help of his teammates, and wouldn't have survived on his own.
Now would you bug off? I'm trying to relax here.
So I think that he can make it up to the C tier on a good day, but not any farther than that. Though the same can't be said for the next character on our list, Firestar. Introduced as one of Spidey's coolest sidekicks, ironic given her powers, Firestar brings the heat in every episode, both figuratively and literally. With the ability to generate and manipulate intense heat and flames, she not only lights up the screen, but also melts the occasional villain's scheme, and probably a few hearts along the way too. Honestly speaking, she's easily one of the most overpowered characters on this list. Her ability is basically to manipulate all heat, everywhere, and that really has its uses.
Well, thanks.
Throughout the series, we see her melt objects made of steel, attack baddies with literal heat beams, and pretty much everything else you can imagine when you have heat-based powers. In the comics, she could even sense electromagnetic radiation and disrupt electronics, making her even more overpowered. Oh, and she also has to constantly limit the amount of power she is using, otherwise she risks obliterating the entire Earth. There's no well-defined upper limits to her power, giving her a well-deserved place in A tier. The only reason she can't get to S tier is because she has quite a lot of weaknesses, such as being weak against telepathy, and in some of the comics she even got cancer because of the fact she's not completely immune to fire, even her own. Overall, she's a strong character, but doesn't really have that potential to take on the entire galaxy. But she's not the only strong mutant on this list. Professor Charles Xavier, aka Professor X, is the brains of the team in just about every X-Men show, movie, you name it, he comes up in it. As the founder and leader of the X-Men, his vision for a peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans is one of the most important parts of the X-Men mythos as a whole, since without him, there would be no X-Men in the first place. But he's not the face of the X-Men for no reason. His leadership and intelligence combined with the psychic abilities make him one of the toughest opponents you could ever come across. Just consider the fact that in the episode Xavier Remembers, he has an entire mental battle with Shadow King, a pretty strong psychic in his own right. He can coordinate with team members from just about anywhere using the power of Cerebro, and at first glance, it's easy to think of him as unbeatable. Though, there is one secret way to beat him. It's something that the mutants try their hardest to hide. The only way to beat Professor X is to put on a metal helmet. That's pretty much it. Multiple characters like Magneto and Juggernaut are completely immune to his powers just because they have those ever so stylish metal helmets resting on their noggins. Moreover, a lot of characters like the Hulk are just so much more stronger than him that he can't even try to control their mind. So, with all of that in mind, get it? Professor X gets a D rank. Telepathy is a pretty strong power, but for that, he needs other people around him, and those people need to be weak enough so that he can mind control them. Moreover, if even one person like the Hulk, Galactus, or really so many other people who are immune to his telepathy show up, then he's completely defenseless to do anything else. So, pretty strong character, but a few major flaws keep him from getting to a higher rank. But he's not the only character who doesn't hold up all that well when it comes to this list. Alistair Smythe is one of those characters you can't help but feel a bit sorry for, even when he's causing chaos for Spider-Man. In the original Spider-Man the Animated Series, Smythe starts out as a brilliant but troubled scientist who works under the infamous Kingpin to support his father. But as it is with comic book logic, he soon gets a serious power-up after being in a crazy accident.
Spencer Smythe loved robots, and now his son has become one.
And turns into the Spider Slayer, armed with high-tech weaponry and a deep grudge against Spider-Man and Kingpin alike. And let me be clear, he isn't someone you want to mess with in the slightest. He's equipped with bioorganic armor, which gives him a lot of superpowers like speed, strength, agility, reflexes, and so much more. He also has a genius-level intellect, and can create whatever incredible mechanical contraptions he can think up. Though the thing that makes Smythe stand out is just how tragic and relatable he is. Instead of being a person who wants to take over the world, all he really wants is to take care of his dad.
I'm sorry, Father, but once again, Spider-Man has thwarted my efforts.
And later, when his dad passes away, get revenge on the people responsible. Overall, he's a well-written character, and a pretty strong one at that too, but the highest he can be placed is E tier. Thing is, for all of his strength, it's highly unlikely he can destroy an entire city on his own, much less the Earth. And when he's going up against the likes of the Hulk, there's really not a lot he can do to stay ahead of the curve. So, pretty memorable villain, but for this ranking, he doesn't get very far. But the same can't be said about the next character on our list. Okay, Sue Storm, or the Invisible Woman, is probably the strongest character on the Fantastic Four team, and one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe. Now, at first glance, you might think that she's just a person who can become invisible and generate force fields, but that's where you would be completely wrong. Here's the deal. She can bend light itself, and light has some weird properties, so this ain't no laughing matter. This not only allows her to make herself invisible, but it also helps her create barriers just about anywhere. Theoretically, the only limits that Sue Storm has is how well she can concentrate and how creative she is. That is especially true in the comics, considering the fact that she managed to destroy a Celestial using her powers. And in case you haven't watched Eternals, which I don't blame you for, Celestials are some of the most powerful beings in the entire galaxy. In another comic, she made a force field inside Deadpool's head and caused it to explode, making it clear that she can end all her fights that way.
That's gonna leave a mark. Oh wait, no it isn't! I have a healing factor!
She's not just strong though. She can also take hits from just about anyone, whether they're your average mugger or Galactus himself. Pretty much anything you can think of, she can do it. Overall, it would be an understatement to say that she's a solid S tier character. The only weakness she has is that she herself is very much human. So if she takes a bad hit or gets psychologically upset, she might get taken out pretty easily. Though we can't really go through this list without talking about the captain of the X-Men himself, Cyclops. Cyclops, or Scott Summers, is the X-Men's go-to guy when you need some serious laser-focused leadership. This dude with the laser vision takes being a Boy Scout to superhero levels, and his love for rules is almost as strong as his optic blasts. Seriously, Scott's so disciplined when it comes to his work that he probably irons his superhero costume while wearing it just to make sure he's ready for each and every situation. Though he's not just a pretty face, he's labeled as an alpha-level mutant, right alongside some other overpowered characters like Professor X and Storm. While Cyclops only has mainly one attack, his laser eyes, there's not a lot that they can't pass through.
Here's one from a pro.
Just like with Firestar, he can melt and destroy just about anything he sets his mind to. And on top of that, again, he's the one in charge of one of the most powerful groups in the Marvel Universe, and he has the strength to back it up. With all things considered, we're giving Cyclops a solid C tier. I put him a leg above characters like Professor X just because of the sheer damage potential he has, but past that, he can't really take over the solar system or the galaxy. Though, those ruby quartz shades are undeniably and completely cool. I have got to get me a pair of these. Editor, help me out here. But we can't really have a list ranking Marvel characters without talking about one of the big bads of the Marvel Universe.
Dr. Doom, I presume. Rhyme.
Throughout all of the Fantastic Four shows, Dr. Doom is the VIP. Very important pain. Sporting that classic metal mug and a cape that's drama personified, Doom brings the party to every fight. And by party, I mean deviously elaborate plans to take over the world. Or at the very least to ruin the Fantastic Four's day. What makes Dr. Doom such a standout in this show is his flair for the dramatic combined with a brain big enough to outsmart almost anyone. At one point in the Marvel animated universe, he managed to nearly take the powers of the Beyonder in addition to his own, and was stronger than the combined combined might of Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and some of the Avengers all together. Most of the time, Doom is defeated in his plans because of how superhero shows tend to go, but that doesn't mean he's all talk, since he can go toe-to-toe with just about anyone who dares to stand in his way.
Fission-powered gauntlets, vibranium-reinforced armor, lasers out the wazoo, a nuclear-powered wazoo at that.
Plus, his voice has that perfect mix of menace and aristocracy, making every line he delivers sound like a Shakespearean insult.
So please, stop embarrassing yourself.
Ranking-wise, Dr. Doom is top tier, no question. He's got it all. Brains, brawn, and a wardrobe that screams supervillain chic. Let's place him firmly in the A tier, since any character that can be scary while being outsmarted by a quartet of do-gooders week after week deserves some serious props. But enough overpowered characters. Let's talk about someone who is definitely not in the upper echelon of strength. Toad, aka Mortimer Toynbee, or Todd Talinsky, as his name was in X-Men Evolution, is like the awkward cousin at the Evil Mutant family reunion. Part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, this guy is more memorable for his, well, Toad-like qualities rather than any of his diabolical He's got a super jump and a tongue that's probably more suitable for catching flies than fighting mutants, and that's really it. He can jump and eat flies. I think you're understanding why I say that he's not a very strong character. Literally everyone can counter him. Just catch his tongue. In the comics, yeah, he has some pretty awesome arcs, but in the shows, he's mostly just there to provide some comic relief. His weak powers, combined with zero forethought and a tendency to be more annoying than his actual nemesis, places him firmly in the lower ranks of mutant villainy. So it's safe to say that Toad hops into the first F-tier spot without much competition. Alright, enough talk about people who eat flies for fun. Now let's talk about Spider-Man. Okay, I know he's got spider powers, but I don't think Peter Parker eats flies, as far as I know. As a person who juggles high school, work, and a personal life, he is one of the most relatable and loved characters in all of Marvel, and for good reason too.
They love me.
The best thing Peter Parker has going for him is his versatility. For one, he can customize his web shooters as the situation calls for it, using stuff like insulated webs when fighting Electro. Speaking of Electro, we have seen time and time again that his spidey sense is fast enough for him to dodge lightning, which means that he can dodge just about anyone that tries to attack him. Because, you know, lightning is pretty dang fast. His agility, speed, and strength means that he can not only avoid damage, but follow up with a few punches of his own. He can lift cars and buildings on the daily, and it's a well-known fact that Spidey pulls his punches so that he doesn't cause any actual damage to the criminals that he contends with. And we know that Spidey can get back up no matter how bad of a beating he takes, considering just how many times he has had his ass handed to him.
Yeah, I always get up.
But it doesn't even stop there. We also know that Peter Parker is a super genius, comparable to the likes of Tony Stark. Most of his fights are won not just by his powers, but because he can think and improvise on the fly, and he can adapt to just about any situation. So if we're taking Peter at the height of his power, I'd say he can easily take over the entire Earth. If he wanted to sneak his way into Area 51 and hack into some super weapon, I have no doubt he could do so. But just like with many of the other characters on this list, there's not a whole lot he can do against enemies like Galactus or Thanos. So, with all things considered, I'm gonna give our friendly web-slinger a solid B-tier ranking, and leave it at that. But anyways, on to the next character, let's talk about one of the most dangerous arch-enemies of the Hulk, the Leader. With a gamma-irradiated noggin that can literally bench press ideas, the Leader has that scary smart evil genius thing going on for him. He acts like he's the smartest guy in any room, and the thing is, he isn't completely wrong.
Because no one can stop me.
In most of his appearances, he has a whole slew of abilities under his belt. He can devise complex plans, build advanced technology, and strategize like nobody's business. And if that wasn't enough, he can control and influence minds, making him a master manipulator. Why do the dirty work yourself when you can puppet master your enemies? In some shows, this guy can even move objects with his mind. But the thing with the Leader is that he's got all his points in intelligence. He can't really fight in close quarters, doesn't have a lot of endurance to take hits, and often underestimates his opponents, which leads to his downfall.
It would have been glorious.
Keeping everything in mind, I'm gonna say that the leader is a solid D-tier character. Maybe on a good day he can pose an actual threat, but most of the time, he's really not that imposing as a villain, and ends up as just another baddie to beat instead of someone actually special. But wait, can you hear that? It's the sound of the Herald drawing closer to Earth, leading his master to a new feeding ground, for Galactus hungers. If there's one character that you need to fear in the Marvel Universe, then it is Galactus. Time and time again, we have seen that Galactus is not just another person out for conquest. He's not just one of the strongest villains of all time. He's a force of nature given form. Everything and everyone must die. And Galactus is just the Grim Reaper of planets. His imposing presence and unending hunger for planets is something that raises the hairs of just about anyone who hears about him. Galactus is rarely ever beaten. Most of the time, he's just transported to somewhere else in the universe and becomes a problem for another day. And if we're being honest, you can never really defeat Galactus, considering that he has the power cosmic itself. He can even give that power to others around him, hello Silver Surfer, use it to make advanced technology, travel large distances quickly. Basically, he can do anything he wants with it, and he absolutely deserves his place at the top in the fabled S tier.
I remember your homeworld. It was delicious.
Ooh, just talking about him gives me the chills. How about we move on to someone who's not as scary? X-23. Laura Kinney, or X-23, had an amazing entrance, and then was liked by the fans so much that she became a staple of the mutants by today. Created as a clone of Wolverine, she brings all the intensity and ferocity you'd expect, but in a teenage package. In her debut in the X-Men Evolution series, X-23 instantly stood out as a formidable fighter with a shadowy past, giving Wolverine a run for his money in the brooding department.
Enough! She's a child, not a weapon.
When it comes to her skill set, most of her abilities are pretty much the same as Wolverine, with the adamantium claws, the healing factor, and the ability to defeat most people in one-on-one combat. But with all things considered, X-23 can only go as far as a decent E rank. She can maybe take out some enemies on her own, but that's where her power limits are. She can't even touch enemies that can fly, use magic, use telepathy, have the power cosmic, and a whole list of other abilities that directly counter her. The same can't be said for the next character on our list. Thor Odin's son puts the god in god-tier Marvel characters. Literally, he has that superhuman strength and durability that would make any gym bro weep with envy. He's gone toe-to-toe with absolute beasts like the Hulk, and there's not many who can fight the Thunder God and come out on top. Speaking of thunder, if his incredible strength wasn't enough, he also has the powers of weather on his side. He can summon and control lightning as he desires, using his enchanted hammer, Mjolnir. He can also use Mjolnir to fly, make powerful energy blasts, and can always rely on it to come back to him. If someone does manage to overpower him though, he can heal extremely quickly, and can live for hundreds of years.
Passage of time only makes Asgardians more powerful.
Overall, it's not hard to see why he's one of the big powerhouses of the Avengers. Given his immense power and control over cosmic energies, Thor has the potential to save or destroy entire solar systems. He's not quite at the galaxy-destroying level of beings like Galactus, but he is definitely a heavy hitter. With Mjolnir in hand and a storm at his command, Thor makes his way to the A tier with no room for doubt. But anyways, let's make a point with the next character on our list, Spike. Evan Daniels, or Spike, is one of those mutants who probably had the most awkward puberty ever. Forget acne. This guy sprouted bone spikes from his body. Needless to say, he's bone solid in the powers department. He can grow these spikes to any length, can throw them as projectiles, and use them as armor. He can also use the spikes to climb walls, and has heightened reflexes. On the downside, Spike's powers can be a bit of a double-edged sword. For one, constantly growing and launching spikes from your body can be pretty painful. And while his spikes make for some great offense and defense, they don't exactly scream subtlety.
Bless you.
He's more of a charge in and take them down kind of guy, which can lead to some pretty risky situations. Personally, while he is a pretty decent character, I don't think his powers really get him that far. In a one-on-one fight, he's definitely not winning against characters like Alistair Smythe and X-23, both of whom are in the E tier. So, with everything considered, I'm going to put him in the F tier. But while Spike might have been a bit of a letdown, the same can't be said for the next character on our list, the Mad Titan Thanos. Look, do you seriously expect there to be a Marvel fan in existence who doesn't know about the giant purple guy obsessed with jewelry? You know, the big bad guy who's all about ending worlds and collecting shiny Infinity Stones? The one whose name will strike fear into the hearts of Marvel fans for a long time to come? The one who, armed with the Infinity Gauntlet, can literally wipe out the entire multiverse in the snap of his fingers? Well man, I don't know what kind of rock you crawled out from, but I hope even you know that he's an A-tier character. The only reason I didn't put him in S tier is because a good chunk of his strength comes from the Infinity Gauntlet, which means that if you somehow manage to take the gauntlet away from him, he becomes little more than your average B-tier villain. The guy's still a titan after all. Enough said. Let's move on to one of the coolest web-slingers of all time, Spider-Gwen. Look, man, I love Spider-Gwen. She's a kick-ass character and one of the best versions of Spider-Man to exist from a story point of view. But when it comes to powers, she doesn't really have a lot going for her. While other Spider-Men like Miles Morales gets upgraded powers, she's just a Gwen Stacy who became Spider-Man. And yeah, Gwen Stacy's great and all in her own right, but she doesn't even come close to the genius of Peter Parker.
I stopped a robbery and I just haven't had a chance to return the money yet.
With her basic powers and a mental aptitude that can't stand against most of the geniuses in this ranking, I'm gonna have to give her the E tier. But speaking of geniuses, let's talk about the richest playboy philanthropist in the Marvel Universe. When it comes to powered armor, Tony's got it all figured out. His Iron Man suits grant him superhuman strength, durability, and flight, along with an arsenal that would make any military general drool.
Thank you.
Think repulsor beams, missiles, and lasers. He's basically a one-man army. Tony's not just brawn in a shiny suit, though. His genius-level intellect is his real superpower. As an extraordinary engineer and inventor, Tony is constantly upgrading his armor, coming up with new tech, and staying one step ahead of his enemies. He's the guy who could turn a paperclip into a weapon of mass destruction if he wanted to. Plus, he's incredibly resourceful, always quick to devise strategies to counter whatever threat comes his way. Look, you know he's strong, I know that he's strong, so let's just actually get to ranking him. The thing with Tony is that he's completely dependent on his armor. Without it, he's an incredibly smart guy, yeah, but that smartness won't save him from getting squished into a pulp. Many other characters, especially ones that use magic or have the power cosmic, can easily destroy him. So with all things said and done, I think the man in the suit only goes as far as B tier. He can pose a really big threat. He's a billionaire after all, and money is power. But there's very low chances that he can actually conquer the Earth all on his own and stand up against characters like Thor, Thanos, or Doctor Doom in a one-on-one. But now, let's move on to one of the best reimaginings of an age-old Iron Man villain, Gene Khan. Now, let me start this off by saying that you really don't want to mess with this guy. He betrayed his best friend, imprisoned his own stepfather, then pretended to be said stepfather so that he could command an entire gang, and eventually managed to become God. To put things in perspective, this dude is not even old enough to drink, and he nearly conquered the entire world. Although, it's not like he did all this just because he wanted power. Just like Tony Stark, Temujin Gene Khan was brought up with tales about how he is destined for great things, and how Gene would one day find all 10 Makluan rings and become a god. But all these dreams were destroyed when his mother died when he was still a kid, and his stepfather took the rings for himself. Where Tony was fueled by a drive to follow his dad's ideals and be the son his parents would be proud of, Gene Khan was driven to get revenge on the world that had wronged him.
Take it. Just take it and go.
But just like I said for Iron Man, a lot of these characters can't go farther than just planetary level destruction, since they wouldn't hold a candle to enemies like Galactus and Firestar. So let's put him in as a B tier character and move on. Actually, before we get into the next character, there's one more thing that we have to rank. Gene Khan only shows up in the Iron Man Armored Adventures show, and while there's a lot of good and bad about the show, one thing that is definitely good is the theme song. I'm not joking when I say that it is probably one of of the best theme songs in all of Marvel animation history. So with all things considered, in complete defiance of logic, let's go ahead and put that as our 4th S tier and continue onwards with the video.
I like it. This is brilliant. But I like this.
Coming back to the script, Mr. Fantastic is truly a fantastic character. Yeah, okay, I'll see myself out. But seriously, this guy is the ultimate brainiac of the Marvel Universe and has stretchy powers to boot. If there's a problem to solve or a gadget to invent, Reed Richards is your man. He can also stretch his body to take on pretty much any form that he can dream of, making him one of the most versatile heroes out there. Overall, he's a pretty strong character, and it's not a stretch to say that he can adapt and overcome most of his enemies on Earth. But the thing is, that's where the limit of his powers lie. Stretching is pretty good and all, but against an enemy like Iceman or Firestar, who can cause him immense pain even in his stretched out form, or against someone like Galactus, who is on another level altogether, there's not a lot that Reed can do. He may be able to sneak under every door, but unfortunately for him, he's not escaping from the D tier. Well, moving on, let's talk about the naked silver guy who rides on space waves. Norrin Rad, or the Silver Surfer, is one of the strongest users of the power cosmic, one of the most powerful forces in the entire Marvel Universe. He may just be the Herald of Galactus, but that doesn't mean he's not devastatingly strong in his own right, especially when you look at the number of times that he's repelled or convinced Galactus to not devour Earth.
I beseech you, spare this planet and seek sustenance elsewhere.
Silver Surfer has a wide array of powers, such as being able to manipulate energy, transmute matter, and even have superhuman strength and near invulnerability. He can fly faster than the speed of light, absorb just about any attack, and then return the energy and more back at you. If you think of it, he can probably do it. The only weakness he has is that he needs to limit himself, as otherwise he can obliterate entire planets. Given his abilities, the Silver Surfer could feasibly take on and neutralize threats at a galactic level. His power allows him to reshape reality on a massive scale, giving him levels of strength that are downright terrifying to think about. So, with all things considered, the Silver Surfer rides the S-rank wave and takes the 5th S-rank spot on our list. Ava Ayala, or the White Tiger, is an interesting character to say the least. A lot of parallels can be drawn between her and Black Panther, both being skilled one-on-one fighters and having to uphold the legacy of their parents. But in addition to that, she also has a lot of experience as a martial artist under her belt, and has the usual increased strength, agility, and reflexes that come with being an unarmed combatant. But if all of that was not enough, she also has night vision, a great sense of smell, and an amulet that can boost literally all of her already existing abilities. But while all of that sounds good on paper, her character doesn't really hold up so well if we really look at it. For one, like half of her strength is the amulet, so if she loses it, then she'll have to fight with one hand tied behind her back. And the thing is, while she has all these abilities, she doesn't really have any abilities strong enough to really stand out. Think of it this way. Will she ever be able to beat Spider-Gwen, X-23, Alistair Smythe, all of whom are E-rank characters? Overall, she's a great character, don't get me wrong.
AP Calculus. If I'm stuck with a bunch of goons on a grudge match, I'm finishing my homework first.
But she just doesn't have any of that special oomph that could get her a better rating. So I'm gonna go ahead and give her that F rank now, and let's move on to someone who has had a fiery look about him since the day of his inception. Does the hot-headed flame guy really need an introduction? Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, is the fiery heart of the Fantastic Four. His abilities of pyrokinesis allows him to generate and control fire, creating everything from fireballs to full-blown infernos. And when he's fully lit, he can fly at blazing speeds, trailing flames behind him. Plus, he's totally immune to heat and fire, including his own, so he can handle heat-based attacks all without a sweat. Though, if all that doesn't amaze you, then just consider the fact that he even has a special attack where he can go supernova, and it's exactly what you think it is. For a few moments, he can expel energy that is comparable to the sun. However, Johnny does have his limitations. limitations. When he's not a flame, he's just a regular guy and can get hurt like anyone else. His flames also need oxygen to burn, so he's vulnerable in airless environments like space. Also, that supernova attack I mentioned is mostly a one and done. He can't really do it multiple times in the same fight, meaning that if his enemy somehow managed to survive the supernova, then Johnny instantly loses. Overall, while he does have raw destructive potential, I personally feel that the endurance thing is really gonna suck in any battle, and he's just not going to be able to hold his own without a team to back him up. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and place him in C tier. Norman Osborn, better known as the Green Goblin, is one of the best Spider-Man enemies, just because of how imposing he is. He made his own super soldier serum called the Goblin Formula that gives him the entire package of superhuman strength, agility, and endurance, making him much stronger and more resilient than an ordinary human. He has a genius-level intellect,
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
and a strategic mind that he uses to the fullest potential in finding out the most sadistic ways to hurt our friendly web-slinger. He also has a number of high-tech gadgets such as pumpkin bombs, razor bats, and his iconic glider. But if all of that wasn't enough, he even has a regeneration ability that allows him to stay in the fight for a lot longer. He's easily one of the worst enemies that Spider-Man has ever faced. But the thing to look at here is why he's the worst. Not just because he was strong, but because of just how much psychological pain he inflicted on Spider-Man. And while that's good and all, for the purpose of this ranking, psychological pain doesn't really get you that far. When he's up against the likes of the Thing, Thor, Cyclops, and so many more overpowered characters, unfortunately, all I can give Green Goblin is a D tier ranking. Let's finally get around to talking about the world breaker, the green monster, the Hulk. Much like Galactus, it's pretty easy to think of the Hulk as a force of nature with no equal, as someone who does what he wants, takes whatever he desires, and destroys anyone who stands in his way. The Hulk really is one of the big powerhouses in the Marvel Universe, considering the fact that he has virtually unlimited strength. The angrier he gets, the more strength he can muster, to the point that he could feasibly get angry enough to split an entire planet in half. He also is more or less, since he can take a shot from just about anything and get back up on his feet. There's not a lot of people who can fight the Hulk and come out on top by the end of it, and just the sight of the green big monster is enough to scare away most evildoers.
Hey, I'm fighting here!
Fight there!
Don't even think it!
But what makes the Hulk even more powerful is the man within, Bruce Banner. While the Hulk has an infinite level of strength, Bruce has an infinite level of intellect. Overall, if we consider a situation where both Hulk and Bruce are working together,
I put the brains and the brawn together. And now look at me.
then they're a solid A rank for this list. They can easily take over the entire solar system, but might not be able to stand up against many of the more powerful cosmic users. Wolverine, or Logan, is one of the most relentless and enduring heroes in the Marvel Universe. To quote the Canadian himself,
I'm the best that there is at what I do.
but what he does isn't very nice. I don't think I even have to get into just how overpowered his healing factor is, considering that it's comparable to Deadpool's healing factor, and that regeneration combined with his adamantium claws and a tendency for violence makes him one of the most dangerous hand-to-hand fighters in all of Marvel. He can cut through any material, has enhanced senses,
I can smell him.
and can live for a lot longer than the average human. However, Wolverine isn't without his flaws. His long life and violent past have left deep psychological scars. In most of his iterations, he's served in World War II, or has worked for the military, or was experimented upon without his consent, or, oh well, you get the idea. He's just not doing the best when it comes to having a healthy mental state.
Cyclops is waiting for me.
So am I.
Moreover, while he does have those cool adamantium claws, that's really his whole shtick. He can't really hurt his enemy from afar, or enemies that can use magic. He also doesn't have any raw damage potential like some other characters on the list, like Human Torch and Cyclops have. While his healing factor, combat skills, and claws make him a persistent and deadly threat, he just doesn't hold up so well when we power scale the entire universe. With everything considered, I'm giving giving him a decent D tier ranking. Oh, and if you're wondering why he's higher than X-23, it's because he's got 3 claws, a bit more grit, and is a bit more experienced than her. So yeah, into D tier you go. Rhino, aka Alexei Sitsevich, is like a one-trick pony. He's pretty good at what he does, but he can't really do anything other than that. And the one thing he knows how to do is to destroy stuff. Clad in a suit that makes him look like a walking tank, Rhino charges into battle with the subtlety of a freight train. And he only has one goal in mind: to smash every obstacle that comes in the way of him and his life. But like we've seen with so many other characters till now, having a decent trick just isn't enough to get you into one of the big seats. He does have the strength to break a few cars, yeah, but that doesn't matter a lot if he's fighting someone like the Goblin or the Thing. So when all is said and done, I think that I'll be putting him in the E rank. A decently strong character, but he's just extremely limited in what he can actually achieve using his powers. Loki Laufeyson is the undisputed master of mischief and magic, and one of the most cunning beings in all of the Marvel animated universe. His mastery of Asgardian magic allows him to cast illusions, shapeshift, perform telekinesis, teleport, and unleash energy blasts. Yeah, he has a lot going for him, even silly horns. But what really makes him such a standout character is his genius-level intellect and ability to manipulate others to his own gain.
You primates have no hope of getting there without me.
While he is strong in his own right, he takes advantage of other stronger people around him to become absolutely godlike.
Join me, and we will strike at the heart of Asgard.
But even he isn't perfect. At the end of the day, Loki is just a trickster god. His power is great, yeah, but it's not something that can one-shot everyone he comes across. And he can't really take on someone like Odin or Galactus, both of whom are in the upper echelon of strong characters. So considering everything we know about him, it's safe to say that he deserves a solid A-tier ranking. Next up, we're heading back to space. Nova, or Richard Rider, is an absolute powerhouse when he's wielding the Nova Force. The Force not only grants him superhuman strength, speed, and durability, but also the abilities to project energy blasts, create powerful force fields, and fly at incredible speeds, including faster than light travel. His enhanced senses and cosmic awareness allow him to detect energy signatures and sense danger from great distances. And on top of all of that, he also has a decent healing factor and a lot of combat training. At first, you may be thinking that he's pretty OP, but there are a few things that hold him back. For one, he is completely dependent on the Nova Force. If for some reason he is cut off from it, then he becomes a normal human being again. Moreover, he has a limit to just how much power he can use in one fight before he eventually gets too tired to keep going.
I'm tired, boss.
But with the full power of the Nova Force, Nova could potentially protect or destroy an entire solar system with ease. Overall, I'm willing to give him a solid B rank for this list, because while he has a lot of raw power, I personally feel that his flaws really drag him down. But hey, if you don't want to talk about overpowered space characters anymore, let's talk about a monkey who's armed to kill. Hitmonkey. He's the monkey version of Agent 47. Look, man, well, I could go on and on about how good he is at unarmed combat and the number of ways he can kill an average Joe like me or you. In a world filled with superpowered characters, he doesn't really get that far.
Hey, a little sign language there.
Don't get me wrong, I love him, but he just doesn't stand a chance against someone like Thanos. Heck, even the Rhino could probably smush this guy. So I'm gonna give him an F tier, but a loving F tier nonetheless. I love the shades, big guy. Next up is another uber strong psychic. Emma Frost is easily one of the most popular telepaths in all of Marvel, and for good reason too. She has a number of telepathic powers, such as reading minds, projecting thoughts, controlling others, and even launching psychic attacks on her enemies. She also has a leg up on other psychics like Professor X because of her diamond form. The diamond form is basically a form where, as the name suggests, she transforms her entire body into organic diamond. In that form, she is completely invulnerable to physical or psychic attack, and basic needs such as the need to eat, sleep, or even breathe disappear, making it the ultimate defensive form. But the diamond form isn't perfect, since she can't use her telepathic powers.
It's not my favorite form. It prevents me from using
my telepathy.
Meaning she has to constantly choose between defense and offense. And just like it is with all telepathic mutants, they need the help of others to really make a difference. So with all things considered, I'm gonna put Emma Frost in the C tier. She's better than Professor X because of her diamond form, but she's still not comparable to a lot of other characters like Nova or Loki. Let's move on to one of the coldest opening villains in existence, Graviton from Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And when we look at Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Graviton was the very reason that the Avengers got together in the first place, so you know that he's nothing to scoff at. Graviton, or Franklin Hall, started off as a scientist who was analyzing gravity and working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to make the world a better place. But after an accident in his lab, he was given the power to, you guessed it, control gravity itself. In the actual show, Graviton's biggest feat would have to be raising the entire island of Manhattan without even breaking a sweat. He also managed to hold his own in a 5v1 against a team of Iron Man, Hulk, Ant-Man, Wasp, and Thor. Though, when we look at the way his abilities are described, it's almost like he wanted to lose. In the show itself, it was said that his abilities had no upper limits.
What are Graviton's upper limits?
He studied him for years, and as far as we could tell, he doesn't have any.
And that he could control all gravity in any way he wanted to. So why didn't he just destroy the Earth in one fell swoop? Overall, while I do think he has the potential to definitely be an A, or even an S tier villain considering just how overpowered his abilities can be,
nothing is that powerful.
I'm gonna put him in B tier just because we don't see any of that power on screen. But at the height of his power, Graviton could potentially create black hole and destroy his enemies by causing their organs to implode. If we're talking honestly here, being able to go inside your enemy and then tear them apart is already pretty overpowered. And that's just the start of what Ant-Man or Scott Lang can do. Firstly, I'm only considering the Scott Lang version for the purpose of this ranking, purely because I feel like that's the one we see more often. And Hank Pym is mostly against using the suit.
I agreed to work with S.H.I.E.L.D. to help people like Whirlwind, not to do more fighting.
But either way, the Ant-Man suit allows the user to manipulate their size using these strange particles called Pym particles. Scott can go as small as the size of an ant, or be bigger than an entire building, all at just the click of a button. He retains the same body strength and speed no matter what size he's at too, meaning that he can wrestle entire humans in his ant form. He can also talk to ants and convince them to swarm his enemies. And when you consider that there are over 1 billion ants on Earth, you start to realize just how horrifyingly powerful his abilities are. But unfortunately, all of this doesn't mean a lot when you can be turned to pulp in seconds in your normal human form. Moreover, if he's being attacked, he needs to have enough time to realize he's being attacked, press the button, and then need some more time for the suit to deploy the Pym particles that make him small. So if he was being attacked by a fast enemy or was taken by surprise, he's pretty much dead meat. Overall, Ant-Man does have a lot of good skills, but even his best skills, like talking to ants, are very limited in use. You can't really use ants against enemies like Human Torch or Iron Man, since they just incinerate all of the ants. So taking all of that into account, let's give him a decent D rank and move on with this beast of a ranking. Beast, or Dr. Henry Hank McCoy, is one of the most important mutants out there. As the name suggests, Beast has the normal melee fighter package of superhuman strength, agility, and endurance. He also has heightened senses of smell and hearing, making him one of the best trackers in the Marvel Universe. Not only that, he also has a minor regenerative factor, and extensive training in hand-to-hand combat and acrobatics. Overall, when we talk about unarmed combat, Beast is already coming out as pretty strong. But as it is with many other melee fighters, all of them have the same weaknesses: being unable to use ranged attacks, not having any crazy damage potential, and not standing a chance against most other characters on our list. We've also got to consider the fact that underneath the Beast, there is the genius that is Hank McCoy. But when we think back to the number of geniuses we have on this list already, I don't really think it matters a lot in the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and give him the F tier. Now it's time to take a real close look at Spider-Man 2099. S tier, let's move on. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Otto Octavius was a normal scientist who was dabbling in biomechanics and all that good stuff when comic book logic struck and he was fused to his very creation, 4 mechanical arms. These metal arms gave him a lot, from superhuman strength, agility, and speed to one of the biggest egos in all of the Marvel Universe.
You dare talk that way to a scientist?
Seriously, he's been foiled again and again just because he underestimates his enemies and sees the rest of the world around him as insects to be squashed.
Catalyst cell infusion. I'm trying to work.
Though, when you can literally do like 6 things at once, it's not hard to start thinking of yourself as superior. But all his power comes at a cost, since he's very unstable mentally, and without his arms, he's little more than an egomaniac scientist who can't throw a single punch. All things considered though, I'm gonna give him a solid D tier for the purpose of this ranking. While he doesn't have the raw power to get him into one of the higher tiers, his intelligence and those mechanical arms definitely put him above a lot of the other characters on this list.
Ugh, you look horrible. Where are your robot arms?
Honestly, I really do like Falcon as a character. He can fly and has ranged attacks, which is so good. After all, you can't even count the number of characters whose whole shtick is that they can attack people with their hands and have no ranged abilities whatsoever. And the thing with Falcon is that he's a pretty well-rounded character. He can do well in close combat, he can do well in ranged combat, he can do stealth missions, he has the training to do long battles. It should be obvious to most of you by this point that he's definitely not going at the top of this list, but we should still appreciate him for what he does have. An ability to fly that counters like a third of the characters on this list. So with all that said, for his flight alone, I am happy to give him the E tier. You could make a case for him being a D tier because he does have a lot of cool technology like Redwing, his drone that can do recon, but all of that can be taken out easily by most characters in the higher tiers, and there's really not a lot he can do if his suit gets busted. Next up is Rogue. Now on her own, she doesn't have any major abilities. If we talk about just her base ability, then it's being able to take the memories and abilities of her enemies by making body contact with them. But, yeah, run that back one more time. She can take the abilities of people she touches. Okay, yeah, the sky's the limit from there. In fact, the reason the Rogue we see today can fly and has super strength is because back in the day, she stole a good chunk of Mrs. Marvel's powers and held on to them for so long that they became permanent. While she does have a lot of weaknesses, such as not being able to fully control her powers and having a fragile mental state, just consider an alternate universe where Rogue takes the abilities of Wolverine or Deadpool and gets their regenerative factor. That would completely cancel out how tiring it is for her to take powers from others. And from there, she could literally collect powers from the entire Marvel universe. While she does have some limits, like not being able to take powers from people who are way above her power level.
I'm lost. Could you help me?
If she takes on the abilities of someone like the Hulk, she could definitely make up for the difference. If Rogue took the powers of every hero in the galaxy, she could feasibly get strong enough to even take the powers of Galactus himself and become omnipotent. Though, a lot of this is just speculation on my part, and it's unlikely she could ever get that strong. So, with everything considering, I'm just gonna go ahead and place her in A tier. Venom is pretty strong, to say the least. Just like with Rogue, the ability to control others is incredibly strong, because if you can find someone powerful, you can just use their abilities to do your dirty work. And any person who decides to get together with Venom gets their hands on a whole slew of powers, including everything from shapeshifting and an amazing healing factor to even camouflage. The symbiote can also remember everything that has happened to previous hosts, so every time it switches to someone new, it only increases in strength. But with all this power comes great weaknesses, such as a dependence on the host body for survival, and being very weak against fire and sound-based attacks. Though honestly, I'm willing to give Venom a decent C tier, because if he gets his hands on someone like the Hulk or Thor, then let's just say that the Marvel Universe is not going to have a fun time. With that said, let's move on to the very first Avenger, Captain America. It's Captain America.
You use your right hand to salute?
I mean, do I really need to say more? Super soldier, near indestructible shield, senior citizen, technically.
Oh, we all have to pitch in and do our part.
B-tier character. A good skill set, but doesn't have a lot of raw power. You got places to be, and I need to sleep. So let's bring out the clock and speedrun the last 10 characters on our list. 3, 2, 1, go! Jubilee can make things go boom with her hands. Good power, but she doesn't get a lot of screen time on television, and compared to her in the comics, her animated counterpart is pretty underwhelming. C-tier. Hawkeye is just a guy with a bow. I mean, there's not a lot that I can say about him that hasn't been said already. He does have a lot of trick arrows up his sleeve and never misses, but does he have an arrow that can destroy an entire planet? I don't think so. E tier, Anya Corazon is just one more person with Spider-Man powers, and not even the best one. Personally, I find her very cool, but she's given very little screen time, and even when she does come on the screen, she has pretty much the same abilities as all the other Spider people. F tier. You remember when I said imagine a rogue who has the powers of the entire Marvel universe? Strange Supreme did just that, and can do literally anything he wants. Basically a god. S tier. The Wasp can fly around and hurt you with tiny lasers. Well, that's better than most melee fighters since range, but like, she's more annoying than an actual threat. F tier. Miles Morales is one more Spider-Man, but with electricity powers and invisibility on top of the normal Spider-Man powers package. Honestly, not someone whose bad side you want to get on. C tier. Jean Grey is so strong in her Phoenix form that it's not even funny. She can literally go toe-to-toe with Galactus. S tier, no doubt. Moon Girl is super smart and can switch minds with Devil Dinosaur. That combination of brain and brawn is pretty decent, but unfortunately, she's just too young to reach her full potential right now. So for now, E tier. Spot can open a portal from anywhere to anywhere. Decently powerful, and as long as he can open a portal between me and Miguel O'Hara, I'm happy to give him the C rank. But wait, why is there a portal opening behind me? What better way to end this video than to talk about Uatu, the Watcher. He can literally see anything and anyone he wants at any point in time and has the power Cosmic, which is more than a little overpowered to say the least. Honestly, while I could argue that he can't interfere most of the time and doesn't use that power,
I can only observe.
I'm gonna go ahead and give him the S tier ranking that he deserves for having to watch me rant about Marvel characters for the past
55 minutes.
Whew! And just like that, we're done. 50 characters from all Marvel animation ranked. This took way too long. Just the script for this one took me like an entire month, man. So please, if you have a heart, don't just watch, interfere with my misery, and subscribe. I don't have a sleep schedule anyway, so just tell me the next idea you want to see from me in the comments down below, and then I'll probably do it. Now, I'm gonna go get some rest, and you're gonna click on one of the videos that you see on screen right now. Bye-bye, night-night, very bye time.